reached out to me and said I was going to be speaking at this year's TEDx. I thought of 1,000 things to say, and I decided I was going to speak about owning your narrative, and that's going to be the subject of my presentation today. My mom is my biggest inspiration. I know everyone says that their mom is their biggest inspiration, but really, guys, my mom is my biggest inspiration, and she has this remarkable story that I'd like to share with this audience. My mother's father, my grandfather, was a good man. He was a disciplinarian, he was tough, he was respected by society because he was a policeman, he was respected by his peers, and he was most importantly respected by his family. But he had just one small flaw. When I come to think of it, and I think it was a big flaw, he didn't believe that the girl child needed to go to school. He did not see the need for my mother to further her education, not to even get any education at all. And so every day my mom would watch her siblings go to school and she would cry because she really wanted to go to school. So one day, my grandmother, my mother's mother, called her and said, "Ellie, you want to go to school, right?" And she said, "Yes, Mama, I want to go to school." So she said, "Well, this is what we are going to do. I will buy bread, and then I'll put it on your head, and then you go and hawk bread." And my mother agreed, she obliged, because she really wanted to go to school. So every morning, on the streets of Ilorin, back then, Ilorin was part of Kogi State, my mom would hawk bread, sell bread, and then in the afternoons, she would attend afternoon school. Back then, that was a thing, there was afternoon school. But by night, my 8-year-old mom would be so tired and overwhelmed that in her sleep, you'd hear her say, bread real, in Yoruba. This means bread is here. Come and buy bread, literally. And so my mom did this. She sold bread, and she was able to put herself through primary school. And one way or the other, she was able to finish secondary school, and then she decided to further her education. And so she went to College of Education, Anpa, and she got an NC, and she decided, I want more out of life. And so she went back to school. She got a bachelor's degree in education, English education. She didn't just stop there. She went back to school. She got a master's degree. And then she didn't just stop there. She went back to school, and then she got a PhD in educational administration and planning, more or less. This is my mother's narrative. My mother was able to look patriarchy in the face and tell patriarchy that this would not be my narrative today. This is my mother, mind you. This is my favorite picture in the world of my mother. It was the day she got her PhD, and she was so happy, so excited. Because as her daughter, I knew what this meant. Her lifelong dream of wanting to go to school and reaching the peak of her career in education was finally achieved. My mother did not let the narrative that they tried to sell to her, that she wasn't deserving of an education because she was a girl child, stop in the way of her dreams. Today, my mom works in the state educational sector, and she influences policies to ensure that other young girls have access to quality education. Now, that's my mother's story. I am my mother's daughter, and she's left a huge legacy for me to follow, and I have very big shoes to fill. So this is why I carry work on my head, literally. There are a lot of people in this audience that know me. This is the reason why, this is my reason for being. And so because I wanted to fill the shoes that my mother had, very huge shoes that she's left for me to fill, I decided I was going to create a name for myself in my career. I was going to get the respect of the world. I was going to become a force to reckon with. And so in Nigeria, when you want to build a name for yourself, I mean, the first place to start with is entering the labor market, right? And so after my youth service, I had great expectations. I believed I was going to get a good job, 200,000 naira, bad as bad, maybe like 150K as my starting salary. And then it was going to be a conducive working environment, nice place, nice ergonomic chairs, AC tight office, so that I'll take pictures and then I'll tell my enemies on social media that I have arrived. And then also let my village people know that it's not bad. Things are not bad for me. But Sakpa happened. My first job, I got a job quite alright. My first salary was not 200,000 naira. It was 12K. And for the 8 months I worked at this place, they only paid me for 1 month. So Those people are still owing me 7 months' salary up to now. So I speak to you, they're owing me 7 months' salary. And I thought I was going to add value. I mean, I had gone to school, I studied mass communication. And I wanted to add value, I wanted to create value in the workplace. I was so pumped up. But somehow, my boss would call me, Eunice, and I'll run to his office and say, hey, Eunice, go and buy me semo and egusi and 2 meat. Eunice, go and buy me jollof rice. And then there was this one time, one of my bosses sent me to go and pick her daughter up from school. No one was sending me to go and cover assignments. I mean, I would see other people going, like, what's happening? Is it that I'm smelling or what? What's the problem? Again and again and again. Eventually, I got a better offer. I left that place. And this time around, my salary increased from 12,000 naira to 15,000 naira. Growth, positive growth, I mean growth, 3,000 naira difference. So in this new place, nobody was sending me to buy semo, and nobody was sending me to buy egusi. At least I had the respect of my peers, or so I thought. But in this new place, I came to understand patriarchy and how emasculating it is for a young woman like me who is trying to make a name for herself in a society like ours. So one day, my boss called me to his office. He said, Eunice, I know you studied mass communication, but I want to move you to marketing department. I'm trying to make some administrative changes in this place, and I think you'd be a right fit for the marketing department. I want you to go and sell our paper. You'll be going to all these appointees, their office with our paper, and you go and sell it so that you bring money into the organization. I said, sir, I will go to marketing. He said, yes. I said, okay, sir. So I went home that day and I cried. And I told myself I was not doing this career thing again. Let me just marry and go and stay in my husband's house. I'm done. But I remember that I'm my mother's daughter. So the following day, I came back to work and I went to meet my boss and I told him, sir, I'm not going to marketing. I would not go to marketing. So somehow, I think I made a very compelling argument because he let me stay on the news and current affairs department. So, patriarchy 0, EUNICE 1. But my fight with patriarchy didn't end there. They would send me on, they gave me a bit, they assigned a bit to me and I was so excited. So I would work on my interview questions for the subject of my interview. I would spend hours writing questions I thought, this person is going to be blown away by my interview. And then the following day, I'll go to the man's office and I'm asking this very important person these questions. I'm like, sir, what's your contribution to so and so sector? What are you bringing to this sector? How are you going to revamp this sector? And then the man will look at me and say, what did you say that your name was again? I say, sir, my name is Eunice EMMANUEL Bagi. They say, Eunice, leave all this one. I like you. Sometimes they'll take it up a notch for that. They would even try to be physical. This happened again and again and again. And this man wanted to break me. I mean, is this what journalism was? Is this what my narrative as a young journalist was going to be? Constantly getting harassed by the subjects of my interview. So I decided this wasn't going to break me. I'm my mother's daughter after all. So while I was drafting my interview questions, I was also doing what we call a psychographic analysis. So I would do my research about this person. What's their like? What's their dislike? What church do they go to? Who are their friends? Who are they speaking to? What are they eating? But most importantly, what problem could I solve? If the person was in politics, I tried to understand what was peculiar about politics, where the person was coming from. What kind of problems was the person encountering on the daily? If it was in business, I'll try to understand the sector that the person was playing in. What problems could I solve for this person? And so I would get myself ready and then I'll go to the office. Sure enough, they'll try to make their move. And this time around, I stopped asking questions like a journalist. I tried to befriend these people. And then, the moment I was waiting for, somehow they'll open up and then they'll tell me about their problems. And because I had prepared for that moment, I would always proffer solution. And then I would notice a power shift. The power has shifted. It had moved from, it has stopped being a relationship between the prey and the predator. Now they begin to see me as someone of value. And so every single time I did this and it kept working. and I had a 99.9% success rate. And somehow I became friends with all these men. Now I know them on a first name basis. I could call them up and be like, oh, EUNICE. In fact, people would complain and say, oh, EUNICE, I want to reach so and so person. I'm like, oh, no, no problem. That's my guy, and I'll call him. And so that's how I learned how to handle this problem on the job. The popular narrative in the States, when you tell someone you're a journalist, the popular narrative is that you may or have been sleeping around to get a name for yourself. But this was what worked for me. I learned how to kick patriarchy's I learned how to kick patriarchy's butt, literally, by learning how to solve patriarchy's problem. Also, it didn't stop there. So, journalists have to be trained and retrained, right? And if you understand how the sector in Kogi State plays, the journalism sector in Kogi State plays, a lot of my colleagues at the time were older men. There are not very many women in the journalism sector in Kogi State, and there are not very many young women. And so sometimes my bosses would send me out on these trainings. Maybe there was a training on the role of media in electioneering or something. And because we might be like maybe 5 women in a sitting of maybe 40 persons, I'm like maybe 4 or 3 women, I was probably going to be the only woman on my table, and I was probably going to be the youngest. And so there will be these breakout sessions where they will give us assignments to do, tasks, and then the men will just face each other like, this one, so not anything to offer. They'll face themselves, and then I'll watch them, and then I'll look at them, and then I'll watch them struggle with trying to do whatever it is they wanted to do. And then I will say, do you mind if I come in? And I would work with them to create the presentation or whatever it is, the task that we need to do. And then eventually, they will let me present. Again, a power shift had occurred. These things took time. It wasn't something that happened in a day, but over time, I also learned to gain the respect of my peers on the job, because I'm someone who likes to try new things. Along the course of my journey, I found myself in leadership. I had never been a leader of anything before, and then all of a sudden I was a youth leader in Kogi State. Now, if you understand the dynamics of Kogi State, being a youth leader is a whole different ball game entirely. Kogi youths are a very, very energetic bunch. And I wasn't just leading, I was also pioneering the youth network. So I reached out to someone, and I reached out to this particular person for help, and he told me, Eunice, you're very smart, but then there's this thing about you're not sexually attractive. I said, I reached out to you for help. I want to run a youth network, and I'm not sexually attractive. Please, what's the correlation? But for some reason, that narrative stuck. It stuck like the way a leech will stick to an animal when it's trying to suck blood. When I was going to the toilet, I thought about it. When I was going to work, I thought about it. When I was eating food, I thought about it. It just stuck, and I couldn't, no matter how hard I tried to push this narrative away, it just stuck for some reason. And so I reached out to another person, and I said, please, I need help. They've made me coordinator of so and so youth group, and I need to run this youth group. And the person said, hey, do you know the reason why we've been watching you? It's because you're a woman. We cannot support a woman. How will we come and start calling a woman leader now? It's not possible. And so when I heard that, I told myself that I am my mother's daughter. I didn't come this far to fail, and I had something to prove. And so, with the people that supported me on my journey, we got working. And this youth network grew. It didn't just grow, it thrived. And there was a time we had over 200 people in our membership base, and 90% of the people demographic in our member base were men. That taught me something. People will poke holes in your narrative if you let them, and people would want to write your story for you. You are the hero or the heroine in your story. You cannot be an observer in your story. You have to take the power back. Because at every point in time, society, whether it be patriarchy, whether it be some other system or the other, would always want to control your narrative. The onus is on you to control your narrative. I have moved from, I no longer work actively in media. I have transitioned to other sectors. I have moved to civil society. I have moved to entrepreneurship. I now run a social enterprise. My co-founder is also in this audience. And all of these experiences, at every point in time, someone somewhere has always tried to control my narrative, what they expected of me. And every single time I have fought to dispel that narrative. Please, can we move to the next slide, the last slide? And so I will be sharing these 4 actions that have worked for me that I believe will support you on your journey to owning your narrative. Because this might be my personal experience, but I believe that if everyone in this audience dared to talk, your experiences, especially as a woman in Kogi State or as a woman in Nigeria, would not be any different from mine. You've had men, you have uncles, you have relatives who have tried in some way to control your narrative. It might not be men, it might be your fellow women. My biggest albatross has been patriarchy. But for a lot of us, it might be something else. But each time, there's always something, there's always some force of nature, there's always some factor that's trying to control your narrative as a person. And so these actions, I believe, will support you on your journey. The first one is you filter what you put your mind, you feed your mind with. You're going to hear a lot of things on your journey. People are going to tell you it cannot be done. They told me that when I was trying to run a youth network. They told me that when I was trying to run a social enterprise. So I decided to feed my mind on the positive. You're going to hear a lot of no's, but then you're going to hear an occasional yes. And I want you to focus on that. The second thing I want you to do is to tune into your personal dialogue. Now, we all hear voices in our head. There was a particular time I was hearing, what's this guy's name, Asake? I was just singing and singing in my head. Sometimes it's shady, they whine me, but there's always voices in your head. There's always voices. People in my office can relate because there's literally always voices in your head. You have to tune the voices in your head. Sometimes it's voices of society telling you, because you've heard no and people have tried to pull you down and then they try to beat your self-esteem. That becomes the voice you hear in your head constantly. And that becomes what defines you. It's what the voices in your head are so loud. You're the only one that can hear them, but they're so loud. It's what wakes you up when you wake up. It's when you're by yourself. That's what you hear. You need to tune that down. You need to focus. It's like a radio. When the radio is so loud and it's just being so noisy, you can tune it down. You tune the personal. You tune the voices in your head and you focus on the positives. You focus on what you really want to fixate your mind with, and then you work with that. Now, establish a velvet rope policy. When you go to banks, there's this red velvet rope that stands as a demarcation, right? I'm sure we've all seen that when we go to banks. That tells you this is where you should pass, and then this is where you shouldn't pass. I mean, that's a bank. They put that there because it's a respected public place. And even in a respected public place where everyone has access to, people are still establishing boundaries, right? And then there's you. You, a very important person. You, a VVIP. Why do you then give access to everybody who just comes in and who just throws things at you? You need to establish a velvet rope policy. When people tell you that you cannot get this done, when society tries to give you expectations and tells you, oh, this is what is expected of you to do because you're from so and so clan. People from this part of our state do not do this, or women from so and so part of our clan cannot do this. You establish a velvet rope policy. You set boundaries. You cut them off. And you only let in the people that you want to let into your life at that point in time. And then the last thing that you do is you become an active participant in your life's narrative. It's very easy for you to let people control your narrative, for you to become the antagonist in your own story and watch some other person dictate what they want. I mean, my grandfather was just that. He had a very loud voice, a very loud personality, and he wanted to do just that for my mother. He wanted to dictate what was going to happen with her future. But she didn't let that. She fought for the life she has now. The onus is on us to, at every point, fight for the life that we want. Yes, you might be from Kogi State, you might be from so and so clan, you might be from, but that doesn't have to be your story. You cannot give some person the power to write your story. You are a full-bodied human being. So how then can you give some other person who knows nothing or who assumes that they know everything about you the power to write your story? You have to take control of your narrative. You have to be your own hero. Now, there's one thing that Disney did for us as kids, and that's something I've had to unlearn. There was always some hero who was coming to save the princess. That's not realistic. Even African magic does that. There's always some prince that has come from abroad that comes to marry Nkechi or Nena in the village and is coming to save her with pounds and sterling. That is not realistic. You have to save yourself. You have to pick yourself up and you have to save yourself because there is nobody that is coming to save you. That's the truth. Every single person here who is a speaker and every single person here who has some stories to tell will tell you that they had to pick themselves up. I mean, the MD, the managing director and the CEO of the Kogi Enterprise Development Agency is a classical representation of someone who's had to pick herself up over and over and has never given people the opportunity to write her story for her. That should be us. That should be everyone in this room. I want you, before I leave here, the last thing I'm going to say is that I want you to have the mindset that life isn't happening to you. Life is happening for you. Thank you, Adankolo, for having me.